What up, Miraculous fans? It's Season 4, Episode 4, titled Mr. Pigeon 72. Why 72? Well, as we find out, Marinette has actually been keeping score of how many times certain people have been akumatized, and Mr. Pigeon is currently at 71, unfortunately enough. And Marinette has been spending what is apparently summer break trying to figure out a spell or a potion in order to stop people from being repeatedly akumatized. Especially Mr. Pigeon, Mr. Rumier. But she just can't seem to find the right concoction no matter how much she tries, as each attempt kind of ends up blowing up in her face. Trix tries to get Alia to get Marinette to calm down a little bit, because, and this is something that I've never really considered, Marinette tends to get hyperfixated on things. A shock, I know, but that only really came to mind because I'm just like, oh, yet she does that for everything. It's not just Adrien. Whatever she focuses on whole hog. And apparently she's gone days trying to research this. And, Alia tries to get her to take a little bit of a break, as she hasn't even done any of her sewing, which is really unfortunate. She's really letting her hobbies and passions go to the wayside. But Marinette has just been so determined to do this and hasn't focused on anything else. Not even Adrien, which Alia tries to bring up, saying that Kagami and Adrien broke up. But that doesn't quite go the way that Alia thought, as Marinette's actually more focused on consoling Kagami, since Kagami doesn't really have that many friends, and Marinette has basically said she's done with Adrien for the most part. But Alia's just happy to get Marinette out of the house for a little bit. So Marinette grabs some food from her parents and heads out into the sun for the first time in days. That is such a mood. And so I love this moment where Marinette basically shanghais Kagami. Doesn't even give her mother time to disagree about her taking her daughter. It's just like, hey, I'm here to take your daughter. Here's some food. Bye. It is the most hilarious thing. I love the friendship that Kagami and Marinette has. It is the best thing ever, and I need more of it. This image has watered my crops and fed my family for years. And despite Kagami's protests, Marinette is determined that if Kagami just sees Adrien or interacts with him, her heart will jump for joy. She'll start feeling all these various different things that we know Marinette usually feels, and she'll fall back in love with him. And she was even convinced that it's her who just needs to accept Adrien for the most part, and vice versa. But, and I love this moment where, because Marinette wasn't listening, Kagami just calls her on her cell phone and says, I'm the one who broke things off with him. Nothing else needs to happen here, we're done. But Marinette will not be deterred, as she knows Adrien's schedules and all that, which Kagami even questions. Again, I love the moment, that he's at a swim shoot. Not a swimsuit, a swim shoot. But it's, of course, being guarded by his bodyguard. But, while Kagami sees this as an opportunity to get away, Marinette's just like, nope, we're gonna do this thing. You have no choice. Meanwhile, we see that the shoot is being supervised by Bob Roth in a deal with Gabriel Agreste, and a lot of it's going to be fixed up in post. But because Gabriel's just like, those aren't pigeons, are they? Because Adrien's allergic to pigeons, which, has only been brought up a few times. Bob Roth tries to kind of con the situation and say that they're doves. And Bob Roth tries to get Mr. Rumier on board with this because Bob Roth wants money, but he tells Mr. Rumier if this goes well, there will be a space opened up in Paris for pigeons because Bob Roth isn't so good with the mayor and all that good stuff. And so they do the shoot, and the initial shot actually looks pretty fantastic. It's pretty well done. But Gabriel feels like there's something missing. Meanwhile, Marinette, snaps a few pics of where Adrien is and does a mass text out to all of Adrian's fans of where he is at the moment in order to keep the bodyguard busy while they sneak in. And Gabriel comes up with this convoluted idea of how to do the shoot with a pigeon, well, a dove, taking a rose and placing it into Adrian's mouth as he falls into the water. And I'm just like, Gabriel, what the shit, dude? But, they try it anyway, as Mr. Rumier's knows that his pigeons are well trained enough to do something like this. But again, Adrian is allergic, and he's just like, I don't know about this, but Bob Roth insists that it'll be perfect, no matter what. Basically threatening Mr. Rumier. What a jerk. Meanwhile, we see, again, the depths that Marinette goes to for Adrian, with all the various different gadgets and props that she has at her disposal, all to get towards Adrian. And I love this because Kagami is seeing firsthand just how obsessed this girl can be. And she just shakes her head. It is such a mood. I love Kagami in this episode. She says the least, but she doesn't have to say anything. Her expressions and her actions speak utter volumes, and I'm just really loving this friendship that they have going on as they get into swimsuits to try to ambush Adrian. Unfortunately, during the shoot, Adrian sneezes because, again, allergic, and he falls into the water. But Bob Roth tries to place all the blame at Mr. Rumier as the pigeon got frightened off by the sneeze, but it's just like, it's an animal, of course it did. So it's pretty obvious where a lot of this is going. Meanwhile, Marinette is trying to spark the magic of Adrian to the Kagami, who's just really having none of it. So Bob Roth tries to figure out a way of keeping Adrian's allergies from interfering with the shoot. But it's not his allergies that interfere, it's the fact that Adrian sees Kagami and Marinette, and so he kind of beefs it into the water, doesn't manage to catch the rose, but Bob Roth tries to blame Rumier's pigeon again for the mistake, and Adrian's like, hey, no, I thought I saw some classmates of mine, and of course they're hiding, so Bob Roth doesn't see who Adrian thought he saw, so he sees that as maybe Adrian's just trying to cover for Mr. Rumier and continues to try to blame him, saying, hey, you better get this right or else. Meanwhile, Kagami is just so done with Marinette at this point, saying, yeah, I feel no sparks, I don't need to get closer to seeing Adrian or anything, our eyes don't need to lock, none of that, I just need to leave. But as things are winding down for Bob Roth, as Gabriel's given them a deadline and they need to meet it, this is the last opportunity. It's obvious that Mr. Rumier really wants that place for pigeons in Paris, so he tells Edgar, his pigeon, this is our last chance, we gotta make this count. And so as Adrian gets ready to dive and Marinette is fighting with Kagami to get her to fall head over heels for Adrian, unfortunately she's the one who falls right into Adrian, completely destroying the shot and bringing Edgar down into the pool with them, and he has to get a mouth-to-beak resuscitation as Adrian questions why Marinette is here, and she just makes up some stupid excuse and leaves. But Bob Roth is determined to blame Mr. Rumier for all of this. And Mr. Rumier is kind of getting a little fed up with Bob Roth constantly blaming him and his pigeons. His pigeons are very well trained. But then Gabriel's just like, wait, those aren't doves? And Bob Roth tries to blame that on Mr. Rumier too. It's just like, he tried to trick me. He said they were doves. And Gabriel is just done with this whole shoot, but he feels like something can still be salvaged out of this. As Bob Roth expels Mr. Rumier from the pool and says that he'll make it so that the mayor bans all pigeons from Paris. And of course, Shadow Moth uses this as an opportunity to akumatize Mr. Rumier, with the Akuma possessing his whistle. And once again, we have the 72nd akumatization of Mr. Pigeon. But with a little bit of a twist. As he calls in his pigeons this time, they have this weird black tint, and we see that if they touch someone, they turn into pigeons. It's the day of the living pigeons. Dun dun dun! And Kagami, once again, very fed up with Marinette. It's funny, at no point does she be like, I don't want to be your friend anymore. It's obvious that they're friends because she's still kind of putting up with Marinette's bull. But then people start turning into pigeons left and right around Marinette, so she manages to transform and tries to go in to save Adrian, but because of his allergies, he can't really dodge the pigeons perfectly, and he gets transformed. And Ladybug ends up being sealed inside a dressing room because of the just huge flock of pigeons and trying not to be transformed. And when she tries to contact Cat Noir, well, in comes Plague saying, yeah, you're not gonna be able to get him. That Cat's been a little bit feathered at the moment, so she brings out a lucky charm, which ends up being a hand drill of all things. But she uses her miraculous vision to figure something out, something that's going to need a little assistance from Plague and somebody else as well. Meanwhile, Alia has actually figured out something from the Book of Miraculous on what Ladybug needs to do in order to keep people from being akumatized. But then she notices all the pigeons tapping at the windows. And then she checks her phone and it's just like, okay, people are being turned into pigeons in Paris. That's not weird. Is it Tuesday already? But then she's contacted by Ladybug, and honestly, Ladybug's communicator really makes me question, how is she able to contact so many people in so many ways? Is it just pre-programmed into the communicator? But, Ladybug lets Rena Rouge know that she's going to need Ladybug and Cat Noir to lead Mr. Pigeon to the pool. Rena Rouge knows what she has to do and brings out a specialized illusion of Cat Noir and Ladybug. As Shadow Moth tries to get Mr. Pigeon back on track. It's all well and good that he's turning the populace into pigeons, but he wants that miraculous. And of course, in comes the illusion of Cat Noir. And we see, much like with Hawkmoth and Mayura, Rena Rouge can actually remotely communicate through her illusions and control them remotely as well, which I think is pretty cool. It's a nice little addendum to her powers. I always kind of figured this was something that she could do, but it's actually pretty interesting to see it in action as it goes. A nice little something something. And so Rena Rouge gets the Mirage Ladybug and Cat Noir to lead Mr. Pigeon back to the pool, as Ladybug has Plague get ready for the next stage of her plan by sending him down to the pool. And so as the Mirage Ladybug and Cat Noir are cornered by Mr. Pigeon, Rena Rouge has it so that it seems like they completely give up and hand over their Miraculous. And I love the touch of having them take off the Miraculous and transform into these random people who look nothing, and I mean nothing, like Cat Noir and Ladybug. It is hilarious. But the illusions throw the fake Miraculous into the pool, and Mr. Pigeon goes to dive in, but Plague is there in waiting and grabs his pigeon whistle, making off with that. As Mr. Pigeon hits the pool and tries to go after Miraculous still, they disappear like illusions, letting Shadow Moth know that he's been duped. Love it. Classic stuff, but it's actually fairly clever. I always love the clever ways in which they do a lot of this stuff. We're in the 4th season and they're still doing clever stuff with the Miraculous and how to get around akumatized people. But Ladybug uses the hand drill in order to make a hole small enough that Plague can get through and none of the pigeons. And so Plague hands over the whistle, she destroys it, releases the Akuma, purifies it, unleashes the Miraculous Ladybugs. Shadow Moth swears vengeance. Bada bing, bada boom. Everything's back to normal. Love it. Done like dinner. As Plague reunites with Adrian, who is now back from being a pigeon, but still has all of its allergies, Mr. Rumier feels devastated that yet again he has been turned into a villain. Really starting to feel so bad for this guy. Like, it was a joke at first, but now it's just kind of like, geez, man, got some personal issues and it keeps being used against him. It's really sad. And, Ladybug really feels bad about it. It's just like, I'm sorry I haven't been able to figure out a way to keep this from happening to you. But in comes Rena Rouge, revealing something crucial, that the Book of Miraculous isn't really a guide, it's just what the Guardians had learned up until this point. You have the power of creation. Your only limitation is your willpower and imagination. And Ladybug thinks on that for a moment, and I think on that for a moment, it's just like, never thought about it like that. That's actually kind of brilliant. And so she concentrates, and despite the fact that she's already used up a lucky charm, but maybe it's just that she's growing more powerful the more she uses the miraculous. That's something that was brought into play, that the older she gets and the more experience she gets, she would have less of a time limit on this stuff. And so she manages to power up, gets this whole new outfit for whatever this is, which honestly I love it. I'm kind of hoping she keeps it. Like, seriously, it's a nice adjustment to the outfit. But she manages to get this new power up and manages to create this new object called a magical charm, which apparently, as long as Mr. Rumiere keeps it with him, it will prevent negative thoughts. And, negative thoughts strong enough to allow him to be akumatized, which I don't know how I feel about that. I would prefer it just to kind of keep a kind of barrier or something around him to just prevent it from happening again, which I really like that. I really like the idea. It's just like, this keeps happening to so many people. Let's make it so that it happens a little less frequently. And with this might be the last time we see Mr. Pigeon. I love that. I love the idea of that. With Adrien thinking that Ladybug is truly miraculous. The way he delivered that line was just something else. And so Marinette, stands with Kagami because it's raining, waiting for her ride to come, and Kagami kind of confronts Marinette that all the things that Marinette was trying to get her to feel, those are all things Marinette feels. That maybe the person perfect for Adrien might be her. And I kind of like that. That Kagami has felt that she just needs to kind of move on from Adrien, but obviously this is something that maybe Marinette should pursue and just do for herself if she feels so strongly about all of it. And it's sweet. It shows a deeper character of Kagami, and just shows that, despite everything that happened between her and Adrien, she still sees Marinette as a friend, and if this is what Marinette wants, then she should pursue it. No matter what happens, see for herself. It's a very fascinating way of going. And as Adrien steps out, he ends up seeing that Marinette has the umbrella that I believe he had lent to her a good while back, I think in season 1. He's surprised that she's kept it this entire time. And, while he offers her a ride home, potentially, she offers that maybe they could walk home together in the rain. And his bodyguard pulls up in the car, and he has to kind of decline the offer because he's still on a strict schedule, and his dad can be so demanding, but they share a little bit of a moment, and it's a very, very sweet moment, and brings forward a lot of questions if maybe Adrien and Marinette might start to pursue something. Because apparently there are not the consequences that I thought would happen, because those were only a consequence if Master Fu was the Guardian, but now that Marinette's the Guardian, there might be something a little deeper going on between Marinette and Adrien in the future. You never know. It's kinda interesting. But he leaves, and Kagami stuck around long enough to watch everything go down, and she truly feels that they might just be perfect for each other, and dang, Kagami, that's some growth on your character. Like, just being able to accept that maybe you and Adrian weren't meant to be, but maybe there's someone perfect for him out there in the world, and accepting that. Dang, that's a mature angle to take that. I wasn't ready for such maturity in this series. And while Tiki asks if Marinette is okay, Marinette simply says that she started to understand that life isn't, and I'm using her metaphor here, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about being able to dance in the rain. Being able to take what comes your way. That even if it's a negative, there's still a little bit of a positive you could make out of it if you're just willing to try. A very interesting lesson that, again, I'm kind of glad that the series decided to go with. It's a sweet angle, a very sweet episode, lots of fun moments. Loved Kagami's character in this, like, there's some growth for this character in this episode. But, I feel like I've gained a greater understanding of Marinette as a whole, as Kagami was getting that understanding. I had to look at things from the point of view of Kagami to understand just how Marinette tends to be and fully embrace that to a certain extent. It's still kind of weird how she obsesses about Adrian. That's no excuse for half of the things that she does, but it's still sweet enough that I'm just like, you know what, Marinette, you pursue your truth. As long as you don't keep destroying situations for people, because she kind of made the whole situation with Miss Harumiya worse by her interference, but Bob Roth is a jerk, and, he probably wasn't going to uphold his end of the deal to begin with. So I'm hoping that maybe we might see Adrian pursue Marinette, Marinette pursue Adrian, kind of get that ball rolling. I'm hoping. It's hard to say. We're still in the beginning of the season, and once you hit the midpoint, it's almost like certain things kind of get thrown out the window, but as we've been going along, there's been a lot of development in the beginning of this season. This season has been going places, and I don't want us to go into the standardized person gets akumatized, we have to deal with it, nothing emotionally moves forward for a lot of characters. It's just I know I've been enjoying the progression of the characters of this series and this season. It's been very well done. I don't want to have to wait until the finale of season 4 to have more progression. It makes all the important stuff be front-loaded and back-ended into the season, with all the stuff in the middle seeming kind of like fluff, with only a few important parts here and there. So we'll just have to see as we go along. They've been doing a lot better in terms of their content. Once you kind of got past the expectations of what to expect from a Ladybug story, when they break the mold, it really just kind of makes you go, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What was your favorite part of this episode? What was your least favorite part? And if you liked this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. Until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.